Oh, so we're doing like a joint web dev and sysadmin because there's a lot of overlap. And honestly, we often talk about a lot of web dev stuff at sysadmin. It's kind of nice too, because like they're not super far apart, but they're like almost 2 weeks apart. So it's almost like me and Jason meet twice a month and talk about a lot of the same things. And sometimes other people are there. Web devs usually like me and Jason and Barbara and Lucas and Megs from Bywater, or at least one of them. And then sysadmin, we meet the second Tuesday of the month at 8 Pacific, 9 Mountain, 10 Central, 11 Eastern. Why are time zones so hard today? It's because it's the fourth day of the conference.
What time is that in Hawaiian again? I'd like to make a
too early.
formal push. I know there's Koha libraries out there in Hawaii. We're needing a conference location next year. So if you're on the call or watching this recording later, please reach out. Sorry, go ahead.
That would be awesome. I'm seeing lots of yeses in the chats, in all caps mostly, and or with multiple exclamation marks. So I agree. Let's see, Hawaii Law Library, I know it's on. Bob says, can we propose a location in which there is no Koha library? I don't know. I guess nothing says we can't, but
if you want to be there and host it, I guess it could work.
Yeah, so someone has to host it, and we're a lot less likely to get like free space if we're not working with a Koha library that can host us. We might have to like pay. I know that I think Heather should host us in California. She told me once that they own a building that has a hotel in it, that their library does.
I've been trying to float that idea for years, and I keep trying.
So hoping for that one of these days. So, and a lot of times what we do at the web dev, at both the web dev and sysadmin, is we have little to no agenda, like today. The only regular agenda item on sysadmin is, does anyone have any cool reports they're working on, or report questions that we can help answer? So does anyone have any cool reports they're working on, or any reports, questions we can help answer? I know Christopher showed off a really cool report the other day that like unioned a bunch of stuff together to have kind of like a monthly dashboard. I'm working on adapting that for our library district because it's much easier than running 20 reports a month or whatever it is that we run to get all our stats. Oh, Rebecca has a report question.
Hey, everybody. So does anyone, I don't have any cool reports I'm working on because I'm just starting with Koha. So maybe next year. But does anyone have suggestions on how to, I want to run a circulation by zip code report. The problem is the +4 of the zip code. And what I want to do is ignore the +4, the dash and the +4. Is there any way to just format the search somehow in SQL to say, just give me the first 5 digits and then group those?
You can use a left, right?
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
Wait, I saw Bob nodding. So if you do left parentheses, then your field name, a comma, then how many digits you want to grab, and then in parentheses. I think that'll just grab the first 5 things in the field.
So in the select, you do like select left parentheses field name comma.
I think it's comma space, however many you want to grab. I may be thinking in Excel right now. I don't know if I've done this in Koha.
Like that I just put in the chat?
Yeah. It's worth a shot, I guess. We can try it on the demo server. Do those people have zip codes?
Most of our zip codes, we just do the first 5 digits. We don't put in the whole thing.
All right, watch me awkwardly write SQL while being recorded. Okay, so select zip code from borrower. There's the first one. And it's gonna be left zip code, comma 5. We'll call that as short zip. You can't group by that, can you? I have to like, I don't think that's gonna work. We can try it. Oh, it did. Look at that.
But what we might want to also do is not group, and can we select count left maybe? Because we, or something, because we might want to also see, do a union and do one that's not the short zip, but regular zip code, and group that way. So we can make sure that there's any that have 5 digits, or the extra 4 digits.
So maybe just for now do.
Yeah. If we do the same and then just don't do the left, but do a union, select zip code from borrowers, group by zip.
Like that?
Yeah, except we have to group by zip code instead of by short zip.
You don't want to see the errors come up on my screen? Okay. It's not a lot of zip codes in this test server.
There's only 36, and none of them have 5 digits or more than 5 digits. So
We can fix that.
yeah,
Can you search by zip code? No.
just search for anybody and change their zip code to have extra digits.
My brain is fried. I don't know what the zip code field is. Okay. Okay, so now, did I close it? No. Refresh the report. Now I've got a 5-digit one down there.
Yep,
And-
so it works.
Right, because that one's not up there.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, clear as mud.
Great, thank you.
And yes, there's often a lot of, in both those meetings, us just trying things and seeing how it goes. So is that Spencer that I see in the room standing there? Did you want to, hi Spencer, did you want to say something or just stand there looking like you want to say something?
Now he has to say something. Look what you've done.
Yep. Well, I've got to fill this time.
I was just reading on the screen. I do want to give a shout out to Michael and George both. I had a question yesterday regarding a report that is pretty complex, and Michael showed me exactly how he did it already independently, and then George sent me an email saying, hey, I think this would work, and they were pretty similar. And in the meantime, it all worked. So now I know which actor has Blu-rays that circulate the most at each branch. So it's way more impressive than I just made that sound.
That sounds very impressive to me. Yeah, and the Koha reports wiki is a great place. I keep thinking that Christopher's there raising his hand. And also just asking people, and you can email the sysadmin, sys_admin@koha-us.org. I think, like 90% sure. I have it saved as contact, but I think it's got that underscore. And then if you've got questions, or you can show up to our meetings. And is there an SQL library for acquisitions? Yeah, there's acquisitions reports on the SQL library. Here, I can show you with my 100,000 tabs that I have open. Koha reports library. That's how I find it. I always just Google Koha reports library. And then Chrome will tell me if I already have it open. But there's all these like catalog bid record ones. Let's see, course reserves, collection development, accounting, acquisitions. Yeah, so there's all these acquisitions reports here. We got a question in the chat from Carol for people watching the video. I didn't just suddenly decide to specifically go find acquisitions reports on
There's
the.
like a plane flying outside of Lisette's window and it's skywriting acquisitions reports.
That would have to be like very small skywriting because there's trees right outside my window. So there's like not very much space for skywriting. Anyway, so this is a great resource in general, just the library here. What I will often do is come find something that is related to what I'm working on, even if it's like a more basic version or a more complicated version, because you can always like copy it in and then edit it. Like I almost always have to add a branch selector because if I'm just putting reports in and running them, a lot of times they come up with a lot more data than we want because I have 48 libraries in my consortium. And so like, especially if you're doing anything but like counting, if there's not very many limiters, and if you've got a fair amount of records or patrons, good to make sure you're putting in limiters so you don't crash your system or slow it way down. Sometimes the reports, of course, none of the ones that are right here, will say when they were written.
It's usually the more recent ones. I think that was something that George tried to make a mention.
Yeah, because there's problems like here, this one says works with 18.05. And so you know it at least works with 18.05. Some of the ones are pretty old and they're still on the like the 3.22 versions. And kind of like the further back you go, the more likely that something has changed and doesn't work anymore. And usually then you just have to kind of figure out like, okay, this was called this table. Is it a different table name now? And you can ask anyone, because also if you're trying to find something and you're like, this report's not working, you know, you can send it out and one of us will come back and say, oh, they changed that table name 2 updates ago. You need to use this instead. So.
Oh, hey, I see my boss's name on there. I also know Sharon. She's my new boss. She used to work at Northeast where George works.
Oh, okay.
So total sidebar. I wanted to just toss out there as well. Usually you're going to run into that with cataloging reports when you're querying marked data, because that was one of the big table changes. And you'll know because you'll be querying the wrong thing and the error will say something about metadata, or I don't remember what the old field name is versus the new field name. But and somebody may have gone through and cleaned up the reports wiki when that change happened. I'm not sure.
Also with fines, the last few updates have had a number of updates to like account lines tables and stuff. And so a lot of old fine reports also don't work without a little tweaking. So those are kind of the big ones. Oh, and one thing that's nice too is it's got some nice, at the top here, it's got like some tips. So like how to do a link. This will select the biblio number and the title and make a link to the title, which like don't work well if you're downloading the report in Excel format or if you're emailing the report to yourself. But they work nicely when you're running it in the system. And then you can also do all sorts of things like link to a borrower number. Here's a link to renew a patron. I've set up links that can like edit certain, like when we turned on self-registration at the start of the pandemic, we had a problem because some of our patron card numbers were too high. So it was making new card numbers that were not within the range that we could use digital resources, but we wanted people to be able to sign up for a card and start using Overdrive right away, especially when a lot of the libraries were straight up closed, like nobody was working. And so Andrew at Bywater sent me a report that was like, here's everybody who has too long of a, or here's like the 50 highest card numbers is what the report is. And so then I could go in and edit them. And I think it even had a link to the patron record, but I ended up linking to where, here, let's find my, so when you're editing a patron, or when you're looking at the patron details screen, really, there's all these different edit buttons. And so I linked directly to step 3 because card number is what we were changing. So it reduced how much time it took for me to go in and change each card number because I was just coming straight here and it was the first thing on the page. So it was really fast to go in and get it done. So you can do a lot with links and stuff. And you can also do some like HTML formatting. So, which also kind of goes into web dev a little bit. I haven't done too much with that.
I have a question.
Mhm.
When you go into tools, there is something listed and it says it's CSV profiles.
Mhm.
And it seems like I recall that it only works with serials or something like that. And that, I don't know, but can you create CSV profiles that would format your data before you're exporting it into Excel or anything like that?
That's a great question.
I mean, I just, when I, sometimes I'll bring data over and so it's like, okay, so it gets in there, but I always have to take my ISBN or barcode, something comes over and it's got, a dot and 2 extra zeros. And it's like, okay, yeah, every single time I do this, I have to go and clean that up. It just seems like if there was some, pre-made formatting that you could say, apply this, that it would save me time from having to, clean it up when I get it into Excel.
So when you export as an ODS instead of a CSV, some of that stuff doesn't come across. So I can cleanly export my barcodes into ODS, but I can also crash my system exporting into ODS.
ODS?
Yeah, it's the third option when you're downloading a report.
I don't think I've ever chosen it because I don't know what it is.
It's just a different file format. It stands for like open document, something spreadsheet probably. And it does give cleaner results, but if I use that on like a really big heavy report, it kills my system. I had to like actually have them restart us at one point.
Okay, good to know.
And then something else you can do that I stole from George, I think, is put in some, like concatenate some characters around your barcode in the report, and that'll cause it to export the whole barcode instead of like collapsing it, but then you get those extra characters too. He may have better strategies for that. And I saw you, Ed. He's not there anymore.
Oh, and they turned off the video so we can't see them in the room at all now.
And I see in chat, Rebecca said that if you use tab separated, you can format those when you're importing it into Excel, which is the second option in the drop-down list.
That's true. Okay.
We are still here. We're just beginning to clean things up. So we didn't want to have you watching us clean things up.
That's fair.
Okay. Fine. Be that way. One thing that I've been doing with reports is grouping things with authorized values, which is something I saw Lisette mention in Slack at some point. So I've created authorized value categories of authorized values, and then use those as my drop downs, which has been interesting. I also did one for genres. So it's actually, I think it's been a minute. But the filter is querying on the subject fields. So
Is that that thing where I had to put in authorized values that'll do like or for collections?
yeah, I think so. And you have to use an R like instead of a like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
show that if you want.
Okay, that'd be good because I'm struggling.
So in authorized values, I set up this collection code report authorized value, which is used this way. I can run reports, or like most of what we've been using it for is weed-in collection, so that they can run a report for all of our nonfiction is in like, we have all these sub collection codes, you know, J00 to 099, so that we can run reports on smaller parts of the collection if we want to. But it's annoying if you have to run like 12 reports to do all the adult nonfiction. So we made this, and actually we're also using it in with the bookshelves plugin on our new WordPress site that we're launching soon. But what you have to do is put in this like /b at the beginning and end, and then in parentheses and with pipes in between, you can do, these are all collection codes, and it'll basically do if it's from any of those, like ORs, in the report. And so we have all of these, and I didn't end up putting descriptions in the OPAC because it turns out we're not using them in the OPAC, so it doesn't really matter. So then if we go to, thanks Bob, see you later. If we go to a report that uses that, we're gonna show first. So this I harvested from Jason, by which I mean he sent it to me and I used it in this report. We're using this for bookshelves on our website. So this cleans up the ISBN numbers so that they're 10 digits because that's what the plugin needs. And then we have a call to title, author, item call number, do all this join in. There has to be an ISBN because we don't want to be pulling things that aren't going to pull cover letters. And then we say, and IC code are like, and then collection, and then the pipe for calling that authorized value. And we actually have it in here like a number of times so that we can run all the, like if we want to run all the adult nonfiction or all the non-traditional items. Well, actually we could do that. If we wanted to run all the like things that are adult. Nonfiction. And we have a lot, this is a lot going on so that we can do a lot of different things with it. Basically, you do have to have all the collections filled out, but you can just set them all to the same one thing and then it'll work. It's kind of a messy report to be showing off. And then you can say, oh, but we don't want this call number range for whatever reason. Maybe that's more for some of the kids stuff because we don't have collections like we have some picture book JE nonfiction. And so if we don't want to run that report for some reason, that part of the report for some reason, then we have these call number exclusions. I don't remember what the other ones were. And I think you can just put the % in there to, if you don't care, and then choose the home branch. And that's right. We'll see if that's right. Yeah, and then it's limited to 15. Oh, that's interesting. I came up with a bunch of YA specific, YA and Juve stuff. That might be because of the percentages I put in, or it might be that some of these are cataloged wrong. We did find a bunch that were cataloged wrong when we first did this. And so that's just like a nice way to be able to do, to not have to hard code in or have, you know, even more selectors to get all of it. And again, this report is just kind of wonky. I thought I had another one.
I did find my genre report if you want me to show that
Oh
off.
yeah, sounds good.
Which might be, it's more universal than my shelf location report because my shelf locations are all wacky. But so these are what my authorized value lists look like. And I don't have the sort of B/B thing going on. It's
Oh,
just
interesting.
Christian fiction and then the pipe, which is the or, and then religious fiction. So I've grouped those into a category. I've grouped fantastic and fantasy into fantasy. Paranormal has occult fiction. So I was looking at the authorized subject headings and seeing what was in our system and what's used a lot to develop these categories. And then I can use that in a report over here. And if I do subject, which I've pulled out the subject here from the 650A, I've also pulled out the genre from the 655. So down here, I can do a subject, which is this, are like, and then on this one, I picked horror stories as my filter. So it's looking either in the subject or the genre for horror stories and giving me, and then I have some other filters. So my collection code is adult books. My location code is anything. And my branch code is Iola. So it's giving me all of the Iola adult books with that genre. And I'm using that. I wrote this for collection development purposes. So we've got collection development grants that we at the system give out to our libraries, and they have to kind of hone in on a specific section of their collection that they want to improve so that they can use this report to go to a certain genre that they want to develop. So when you run it, it looks like this. I just ran it beforehand because it's a little slow. But you can pick the genre from that list I showed you, the collection code if you want to filter by that, and shelf locations if you want to filter by that. And this is also using those all filters we were talking about a little bit earlier. I guess you can't see it there. So for the genre, I don't have one, but for collection code, I'm using the :all so I can have the all options. I don't have an all branches option just because that isn't really necessary on this one for me. So that's another thing I learned recently. Neat tricks.
That one's really great.
Is that
And
on the wiki?
It's not on the wiki. I should
it-
find my password and add that one because it is not consortium specific or me specific.
Yeah, that's not on the wiki. I saw it in a, gosh, that was probably early on in the pandemic. I think Bywater did something where Nick was doing that. And I was like, oh yeah. And then I took notes and a year later got around to actually trying it out. So that's not on the wiki, but that video still exists and there's some notes that go alongside it. But I don't remember what video specifically that was off the top of my head. As far as like web dev stuff goes, that's kind of a lot of what I've been working on yesterday and today. We have our test server set up and we've just been doing all sorts of interesting things on there, some of which I've already shown off. Adding these labels like Christopher Brandon talked about yesterday for some shelving locations to kind of highlight them and make it easier for staff. And then also, oh yeah, lost and damaged statuses, which will also show on the check-in screen after the update. And these formats will also work on the checkout screen. They need a little bit of CSS and a little bit of jQuery. Yeah, the warning triangle, that's something that Christopher put together. Well, maybe in Pueblo even? I don't remember if it was done then or if he was just testing it.
There is a video for that, so let me find it and I'll post a link in the chat box.
Sounds good. So he'll post a link to that with the warning triangle, which is separate. We've had that at least on our test server for a while. I don't remember if we actually have it on production yet. So these look at like a span, the damage span. Does it contain our damage status? Give it a label, and then replace that with the label. And so we also have to set some CSS for that. And those are Bootstrap labels, so they only have a few options for colors, but you can change the background color in here. I showed this morning, didn't I? Yep. This is all I've been doing for like 2 days, so.
I have a web dev question.
Yeah.
Does anybody have good, quick, easy code to control sorting in a data table? Like, I want to make X column, I want it to sort by that column. You had one pulled up earlier, Lisette, where you were like, oh, I could sort this column by default. Do you have code that actually does that? Because I struggle with that.
Not yet. I was gonna try and make it sort.
Okay.
I guess what you could probably do is look at, here, I still have that up, and that was one of the next things I was going to work on. Here, this one, it sorts by date of request automatically. So you could probably inspect and see this has the class sorting ascending. So you could probably write some jQuery to give, say, on loan. Well, or probably what I do is sort it by call number. So you'd say,
so you'd want to remove the ascending from the, or the sort from the first column and add it to the last column.
yeah. And then let's see. One thing that's annoying is that it's all the tables have like area controls, transfers, TV, move.
Mm-hmm.
So writing the jQuery might have to look off of like if it contains this, then let's see. There's probably a less messy way to do this than how I'm about to try.
I didn't mean to make you like do it live. I just wondered.
That's the next thing I was planning on doing. So, okay. And that just because if we say so we only want it to be on that specific page. Oh, Barbara put something, begin Re-sort Invoice table in descending order from a ticket.
Is that what you're talking about? We've got a lot of sorting of different tables, and Lucas created something, and then I was able to go to some of the different tables and apply it to, to other ones. Sometimes it doesn't work, probably because I just don't understand, I'm missing what I'm supposed to be targeting. But is that what you're talking about?
I think that
Sorting?
At least for the data table. I mean, it's 4 data tables. I haven't checked to make sure this one's a data table.
yeah, that one doesn't look like it is, but maybe it
Okay.
is.
But I
But
might
the
be
one
able-
that I need to change is a data table. So I think this code would work for what I
yeah,
need.
data table, no footer.
Oh, okay. It doesn't have that. All right. Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
let's see if it,
Yeah, we've resorted the invoices, the holds to pull, the orders, some stuff in the orders table.
I think the table I'm looking at is fines because it's sorting by the far left date column, which is like a timestamp, so it's not that useful. So I was gonna sort that by something different.
So we have the document ready function. If the window is this specific window, which you can also on certain things, like I have some jQuery that only activates on the patron add screen and some different jQuery that activates on the patron edit screen. So if there's like that kind of limiter in the URL, you can put that in as part of this if it's part of this index. When it loads on the table, what's the table called? I clicked in like very much the wrong place. Okay. Let's see. Did I? Is it this transfers? So that means you also have to do it like for every branch on here. But
since they probably all start with transfers T, you could do like a wildcard selector, right?
I haven't actually done wildcard selectors in jQuery. Would I put that in the quote or out of the quote?
I don't know. I just know it's a possibility. There are different symbols. I don't think it's like that. I'd have to look it up. Maybe Christopher or George know, but
You would have to do something where you're saying that the ID equals, you would have to you would need to like have a selector for the page. So go back to that whole page. So find a selector for that page, or a selector that's above, that's at least at one level above that table.
Like this result list?
Yeah,
Tables inside of it.
yeah, do that. Do the ID for result list. So use that as the main selector, hash result list.
Okay. So we do hash result list. Wait, no. There.
Or pound sign result list, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And then
you want to go ID for the next selector.
like this.
I'm looking it up to make sure I get the right code for starts with.
Okay.
And of course, since I'm at home now, it's I'm having a hard time on my laptop and my internet connection sucking up all the resources, which is why I'm not sharing my video. Otherwise, I would probably have choppy video too. So the next thing you want is after that selector, you want ID equals, and then if you've already got what the selector that you're using in double quotes, then you want to use single quotes. And if you're using single quotes, you want to put the next part in double quotes.
So when you say ID equals, do I want to do that in the single quotes here?
Okay, hold on a second. I'm still looking for the selector. jQuery. So I can't see what you've already got written.
Oh. So I've got it.
So you've got single quotes, ID, and then you want a left square bracket after the equals, or no, No, you want the whole thing in brackets. So a bracket around ID. And then another bracket at the end. And it's not going to be equals. It's going to be equals something else.
I just pasted. I think it's the up caret. So it's gonna be like result list, no space, then bracket, then up caret equals. But I think, okay, yeah, ID, and then yeah, that might be right. You don't want the plus value plus. That's inserting a variable. That's just what I copied off of Stack Exchange.
Hi, Cat. Cat wants attention because I'm home. He's a very loud boy. Okay.
Sorry, I completely lost the audio there for a second, but yeah, I think that looks right. But instead of equals, I think it needs to be caret equals, and I'm having such a slow internet connection at home, I can't be 100% sure about that.
Yeah, she's got the caret equals in there, so it may have worked.
And
What do
then if I remember correctly, caret equals is going to show you everything that starts with transfers ST.
So let's see.
So the 5 is probably the number, the column, right?
Yeah, but here's an interesting thing. If I do 6, which is what I thought it was when I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, did I? Maybe
I think I remember it being like you would count the column you wanted and then subtract 1, and it was,
So it's like 0 indexed instead of 1 indexed.
yeah, something like that.
So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, and the first time I put in, oh, that was probably because I hadn't put this part in yet, or where I was trying to make it work for all the tables. But because when I did it for 6, which is what I thought it was supposed to be.
You're missing a semicolon. Right
Where? Oh, right there.
And you also need a space after result list. Here you go.
Yeah,
Now it tells me I have too many semicolons. No. It still says
Oh.
a semicolon.
Oh, never mind. You know, oh, because you're okay. I see. Never mind.
It could just be that space I told you to take out. Ooh, look
See,
at
it's
that.
trying to do the actions table that I hid because I don't want my branch managers to mark things as in high demand so they don't transfer.
So you just walk it back 1 and it should work?
Yeah.
Okay. Look at
There we
that.
go.
Beautiful. Some web dev in action.
Web dev in action. So the other thing I was going to do was hide any of the on loan stuff. So we could, if people have other things, this one might be harder. If it contains. That's,
You're just going to find a data table or a data cell with
yeah.
do in there, and then find the parent row and just hide it.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and Wally, the best way to, well, for YouTube in the chat, you all are blowing my mind with this and I'm loving it. I wish I was as adept as you are. I'm looking forward to continuing to learn more. Thank you. But also, like, it took 5 of probably the most experienced jQuery people to figure that out. So
That doesn't mean you should not try.
Oh yeah, no,
Right.
just that if it
Um,
looked like we were really adept.
But we
But
were
we
really just
still-
Googling things. Stack
we were really just
Exchange
Googling
is
things
powering us all.
and looking at the code that we already had, you know, and then just tweaking it. That's a lot of what we do. Like a lot of times I'll just look and be like, okay, if it contain, I need something that contains.
Also, just breaking things and then fixing them till they work has been one of my most loved strategies. So do it
Nothing
on a
is
test
more-
server.
Nothing is more motivating than going into making a minor change to a piece of jQuery and then breaking everything and spending like the next 40 minutes frantically trying to get everything to work exactly the same way it did a half an hour ago. And this is why you have test servers, so that when you do something like that, you can go, good God, why didn't I try that in the test server first? One thing I'd say for anybody that's thinking, you know, this is so hard and these people, you know, Lisette, you know, we're the experts. One thing I would say is that I'm not really an expert at this. I've gotten a lot of compliments today about jQuery and SQL and the 2 workshops I've done in the last 2 days. And I always get compliments about how, oh, you're so good at this, you're so smart. And here's the thing is that I'm not that smart. It's just that, you know, I work with so many people in the past that have tried to do these things. And as soon as they come to a roadblock, as soon as they hit a brick wall, they say, well, that's it, I can't do it. And they give up. And that's my secret, is I just keep pounding my head on that brick wall until I knock a hole through the wall.
You know, it's really annoying is, you know, all this time, you know, I've been, you know, gleaning stuff off of you only to come to find out you've been stealing stuff from me. So we're getting nowhere.
Yeah, we really only have like 2 or 3 good ideas between like the 5 of us. And we're just passing those good ideas back and forth.
It's slightly alter it so that when I'm showing you something, it looks different, but it's really the same. I will just add that I'm a librarian. I have a biology degree. I didn't go to school for this. So if I can learn it, you guys can too. It just takes practice. And once you've got the foundation down, then you get to really start playing, I think. Like, I love these meetings that we're having because I'm getting so many ideas. Like at the consortia SIG, we were talking about putting like a my library search. I'm like, oh, I could do it this way, this way, this way. So it gets me excited just thinking about ways to create efficiencies in our systems.
Yes. And when we harvest from each other without other people knowing, that's very easy to do. If you're like, oh, I remember Christopher talking about this and I want to try it, but he's not around. This is how you do that. So you go to the catalog. This is Christopher's catalog. I just go to their actual catalog fairly frequently because my director really likes it. She'll be like, oh, I saw this thing they did. And I'll be like, our thing does that too. You just don't look at the staff side catalog, or you only look at the staff side catalog, so you didn't know that. But if you right click and view the page source, it has everything, and there's kind of a lot. But now all of the script is like at the bottom. So you can go down and there's some that's built in. And then, but you can start seeing there's like a test here with comments. We all try to put comments in. We highly recommend putting comments in. If you do this // that line will be commented out. I harvested from Jason a couple years back, putting a bunch of dashes in so that it like stands out more, that it's the start or end of a section.
And I stole that from George.
Which is interesting because none of the jQuery he wrote here had that.
Maybe
There is
just
a
the idea,
limit.
but yeah.
There is, and I don't know if there still is, but at one point there was a limit to how much jQuery you could put in. There was it maxed out at a certain number of characters. So when I still worked at Latah County Library, we actually hit that limit. And so I took out a whole bunch of unnecessary characters in order to make it actually work. So I could add more. So I can make it even longer.
Take out all the comments.
Yeah. And so I think that must be gone because I added a bunch of stuff before we deleted stuff last year, including all those comments. And then you can just find whatever it is and copy it, preferably into a test server or whatever. And then thank whoever it is when you have it working and say, Christopher, thanks for telling me about labels. I went and got the code off your website. And then it turned out it needed CSS, which I also found off your website, but only after asking you about it.
And there's also a lesson here in look how open Christopher's catalog is right now. Let's hope he doesn't have anything in his JavaScript or CSS that would be a bad thing for the rest of the world to see. So
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, Christopher.
Well, now it's out there.
Well, I mean, Jason can edit
well,
the video.
it's something just to be mindful of for your own sake as well. If you're making changes in these system preferences, don't put any private identifiable information there because people can see it.
Don't be putting passwords in there.
Yep. Victor asked, any tips / lessons learned on upgrading from an older Koha version to the latest one? I think I read somewhere MySQL was replaced from a different database server. Anything I should be aware of with compatibility schema issues? Well, there have been a number of table updates. We talked about that a little earlier. So a lot of your reports might die.
There have been some table updates. I think what Victor might be getting at is that a lot of libraries, Koha is generally run, for a long time, the database was MySQL. And then there is a fork of MySQL called MariaDB. And at some point around 17 or so, most Koha libraries started moving their data from MySQL to MariaDB. I think MySQL should still work because MariaDB is just a fork of MySQL, but I think it had something to do with the open source community. I think some company owns MySQL and talked about making some changes to the openness of it. And so as soon as that happened, members of the Koha community wanted to move everything to something that they felt was going to remain open.
And on the front end, that change is fairly seamless, I would say. When we switched to Maria, like everything still worked. Since it is just a fork of MySQL.
Yeah, there have been, the database tables in each update of Koha, in each major update. There have been some table columns and rows that have been changed. There have been some tables that have been dropped. The most significant area in I guess it's 9 years now that I've been using Koha, the most significant changes have happened to the account lines, because Koha has gone through a major renovation in how it handles fines and lost item replacement. Any money that you bill to the patron, that whole system has changed dramatically and all for the better in the last 9 years.
When we first came up in 2016, I would see this reference to MariaDB, and our director's name is Maria. And I thought, isn't that cool? They named the database, personally after my director, until I realized, oh, it's an actual thing.